You know, you had the green pillow.
Oh, okay. So last week we asked the question, who is your authority? You guys are all adults now, so that makes you wonder, who is your authority? Did you guys have any time to reflect on this question this week? Diana? Did you?
Talking in a house, in a church, in a community,
Sure. Whatever. However you reflected on it.
Well, at church, I mean, it's obvious it's the pastor. And then God. I mean, God first, pastor second. Sorry.
Are you sure, though?
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Wait a minute. I gotta check it out again. In a house, I think between husband and wife it's equal, but I think the head of the house should be the husband. I mean, the wife. Not that the wife is lower than the husband, but I think the wife should be submissive to the husband.
Right.
You know.
Okay. Anybody else have time to think about this?
Government is our authority.
Okay.
Your boss at work is your authority.
Yeah.
Okay.
And since I still live at home with my parents.
Okay. Anything else?
If you're at school, probably professors, teachers.
Okay. So what does it mean for someone to be in authority? What does it mean?
I don't think that's so much like power per se, but I think more like
in charge of a group.
Dark force.
Thank you threw off her group.
yeah.
Has anybody seen A New Hope? Star Wars A New Hope?
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, that wasn't The New Hope. I'm sorry, that was Return of the Jedi.
We were just watching it the other day.
Oh. There's this part where Luke is, in the room with the Emperor and everything, and he all turns around and he's like, "Feel the power of the dark side of the Force." Just the way he says it is so funny. Sorry, but go ahead, Grace.
I'm done. I can't.
She's good.
That ruined it for you, didn't it? Sorry, friends. What does it mean for someone to be in authority?
Be in charge of a group or organization.
Okay. Alright. Any other ideas?
Your authority leads and guides you in things that you should do.
Okay. Like, what do you mean?
Like, okay, let's say a work situation. Your boss will give you tasks for that. If this is your job, this is what you do.
Okay.
And keep you in that area.
They're the decision maker.
Okay. Okay.
So it goes along with what Chuck was saying, I think.
So how does that relate with what Diana was saying about husband and wife? Does that mean the husband makes all the decisions and the woman doesn't?
No, like she was saying, I think they talk about it and go over it. But ultimately, I think if the husband doesn't, since he's over the house, if he sees that it's better to go one way than the other way, then he makes a decision to go that way.
So he can make a decision that goes against what the wife wanted?
He shouldn't, but if he has, usually the husband has better foresight than Men have better foresight than women most of the time.
That was sexist, and I didn't say it. I didn't say it.
I have terrible foresight.
You do have that on recording.
I do, and now everybody's hearing
Save
about.
that.
It's okay, they can't see our face.
You'll need that later.
And then, like, Michael, like, he'll come to me, like, no, I don't want to do this because this, and this. I was like, oh. I didn't think that far in the future. You're right.
Well, this is scaring me.
So, I think,
And that's.
I think a husband and wife should definitely talk about matters and come to a decision together. But ultimately, like...
But if they come to a decision together, then the husband really isn't the authority in that situation. Because you just said that the authority is the person who makes the decisions and who...
Right, but I'm saying that ultimately the husband makes the decision.
Okay. So you don't really think that the husband and wife are equal?
Yes, I do, but I'm saying...
Can you explain your point more? Because that's inevitably what's going to result from what you're saying.
No. I don't know. Never mind.
I'm trying to get you to talk more, not less. Nicole?
The kind of way I see it is, you know, the head of the household usually takes everybody's feelings into account, you know.
Okay.
They hear, you know, what do you think about this? And then make a decision on what's best for the family.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of how I kind of perceive it.
Okay.
Thank you, Nicole.
So do you see the husband and wife as equal?
To a degree, yes.
What do you mean
But
by
when
to
it
a
comes
degree?
into the bigger decisions that can affect the full family,
Uh-huh.
I believe it's usually the head of the household.
Okay.
And I see that all just in my family.
Okay. All right. Diana, what do you have to say about that?
I think that as authority, not that my husband is gonna tell me what to do, even though we come to a conclusion, like this is how it works better, whatever. But when it comes to like if something happens, we come to a conclusion. It's husband's responsibility to take over for what happens in a house, or what comes in a house, or what goes out of the house,
Mm-hmm.
Stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Not mainly in decisions. I think it's just about anything that goes in a house. I think it's husband's responsibility because, first of all, that's what the Bible says, because it was chosen the man to be the house, the head of the house.
Okay.
And I think it should be the husband that like I said, allows what goes on and what goes out.
Okay.
Right? I mean, like something happens, I am not gonna go and speak for my husband. My husband is gonna stand up and speak for the family,
Okay.
not me. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
Kind of like in that way, as a family.
Well, I tend to ask Gracie to do the talking, so. Can you call them and see about lowering our bills? I don't want to talk on the phone.
Yeah.
Don't judge me. I don't like talking on the phone.
There's times that I ask Becky to make the
See, you know what? You know the struggle's real. I just don't want to talk on the phone. Worst thing that happens to me in my life
All you're doing
is when people call me.
delegating. That's all you're doing.
I like that. I'm gonna steal that. I'm delegating to you, Gracie. Okay, so let's look at some basic structures of authority, which are not popping up one at a time. Why are they not popping up one at a time? Why are they doing this? Okay, well, we're just going to go ahead and pretend like it did pop up one at a time. Okay? The four basic structures of authority, which have been mentioned already: government, business, church, family. Now, here's the thing that you'll notice about the structures, though, is that they're kind of interdependent. The government, for instance, is dependent on a strong family. If America isn't built on families, see what I mean? Like even a socialistic type government, you've got people who are doing the work, and then the government takes that money and gives it to people who can't do the heavy work, right?
Mhm.
But what if nobody's doing the heavy work?
Mm.
See what I mean? Now you have a tyrannical kind of government, right? Where the government is saying, okay, you have to do this, and this is what we're going to do. See what I mean? So now you got a little bit of a, which is why I'm not a real big fan of socialism in the first place. You know, I don't really think that other people should tell me to be charitable. I think that I should choose to be charitable or choose not to be charitable. Just my own personal thing, though. I don't know. Maybe it's just my own thing. I don't know. Who knows? But anyways, the government is dependent on business's success, right? And a business's success is built on people doing their job. But people usually don't do their job if they're not from a solid family. For instance, if a family is one where drugs are heavily used, alcohol is heavily used, there's really no training of responsibility, no training of how to do your job, that kind of stuff, you're not going to have a good worker raised as a child, are you? So then your poor working child is going to go on to be a poor working in the business world, which is going to go to making America as a whole weaker, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then the government has less to work with, right? So they're kind of interdependent is my point. And it all kind of comes down to the family life. The single most important aspect that a Christian can do for the well-being of changing the government, for the well-being of changing the business world, for the well-being of changing things, is to really be the best at your family that you can be. You know what I mean? If you're a father, being the best father you can be. If you're a mother, being the best mother that you can be. See what I mean? Where your kids know that you love them and you're doing everything you can to train them and to teach them to be an asset to the community and to the society and not something that deters from it. So, let's look at this. The government, first off, I know especially now we're living in a time when people are just looking for things to be pissed off about. You know, Obama got elected and everybody's like, oh no, you know, the world's ending, it's the Antichrist. And now Trump's been elected and everybody's like, oh no, let's revolt, he's a pig, you know, all this nonsense. And, I mean, obviously, no matter what happened, that was going to be the result. And so let's look at this. 1 Peter 2:13 through 17 says this, be subject to the Lord's sake, for the Lord's sake, to every human institution, whether it be to the emperor as supreme, or to governors as sent by him, to punish those who do evil and to praise those who do good. So we don't really have the emperor nowadays, so you could easily substitute with as the president or as governors and mayors as being sent by him. Yeah. That's not a perfect equation, but it's good enough for now. For this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish people. See, one of the things that he connects submission to authority with is that it's for witnessing's sake.
Mm-hmm.
Not for the sake of a strong government, right?
No.
Because governments come and fall, that has nothing to do with God's kingdom. Our purpose is God's kingdom. So he says, in doing this, you are going to be, in verse 15, this is the will of God, that by doing good you should put to silence the ignorance of foolish people. It is literally God's will for you to do good in this aspect, right? Live as people who are free, not using your freedom as a cover-up for evil, but living as servants of God. Honor everyone, love the brotherhood, fear God, and honor the emperor. So then that brings us to what about in the case of someone like Donald Trump, where I personally do not believe with his values. I don't agree with where he's doing things. And I don't agree with him, you know, another big one I hear is his sexist comments. Well, let's take that down. First off, God is the one who appoints authority. Now, this does not mean that God condones everything that an authority person does. He gives them the opportunity to do something, and they do what they will with it. For instance, Hitler. God was the one, right, who put Hitler in power, right? Doesn't the Bible say all authority is established by God? And that, see what I mean? God doesn't just step back from, oh, what happened while I was in the bathroom?
Right.
You know, he gave Hitler as much of an opportunity as he gave George Washington or Abraham Lincoln. Hitler misused that authority, though. See the difference? That's not God's fault, because God gave Adam and Eve the same situation of choosing to either obey or disobey, and he gives all of us that. See what I mean? So, with that being said, you know, so what about when our authorities don't do things that we don't respect? For instance, his sexist comments, or his you just don't like him as a person, or you think that he's an idiot, or whatever. I mean, I hear a lot of different things. A lot of different things, all the time. And the thing is, you don't have to agree with everything that the person in government does or does not do. You have to realize that you've got bigger purposes in your life than establishing a perfect government. And that prayer is going to establish way more. So should you protest? Under certain circumstances, I can understand why a protest would do good. But in my opinion, most protests don't do that much. Because what they do is they distract you from what God could be using you in. You know, for instance, they had this day where women were not working to show people how one day without women, you know what I mean? And I understand their point. I really do. But here's the thing. What happens when people don't show up for work? They get fired. So, see what I mean? That's not responsibility. That's, oh, I'm trying to prove a point, so I'm gonna not go to work this day. That's not really proving a point. That's, you get paid less.
Yeah.
And you really didn't prove a point. You just hurt the company, which the company didn't even have anything to do with that. They're just selling a product. You're helping them to sell that product. What do they have to do with your political views? See what I mean? And then the whole Women's March. So they littered and left a bunch of trash for everybody else to clean up so that they could wear vaginas on their face. They actually wore vaginas on their head. I'm not making that up. Like cloth vaginas. It was gross. It was a little gross. So what was their point? What were they marching for? Women's equality. What are you wanting? You know what I mean? Well, equal pay. Where are you not being paid equally? See what I mean? It wasn't clear. See what I mean? And so I think if you're going to do a protest, it needs to be under a few guidelines. First off, be clear on what you're doing. Because what's going to happen is you're going to hurt your witness more than you're impacting it. Second off, make sure it's not a distraction. See what I mean? I'll give you an example. In the Middle East, you have women who really don't have rights. Legitimately don't have rights. And you have Christian women who still don't have rights in those same countries. What do? Do they protest? Do they cause a revolution? Or do they go out and witness to others? See what I mean? Don't get so focused on trying to make a utopia here on earth, a perfect place to live, that you forget what your real mission is. Because our inconvenience in this life is nothing compared to an eternity in hell. That was in a book that we were reading by Don Ross. It's called Turnaround Pastor. Your slight life of discomfort is nothing compared to someone's eternity in hell. Do I think that women are equal to men? Yes, absolutely. Do I think that there should be equality between men and women? Absolutely. Do I think that there should be equality between blacks and whites? Absolutely. No problem in all of that. What I don't think is that we should get so distracted on the unfairness of the world that we let ourselves be tainted by that. You don't know how many Christians I've heard who are very racist. Very racist. They've allowed the world to dictate what they're going to do and who they're going to show love to. See what I mean? And so I think that there definitely does need to be a distinction. You are in America. You're not necessarily all about America. Okay? We don't act because it's going to do good or bad to America. We act because it's going to do good or bad to God's kingdom. Does that make sense? We're loyal to God first, country second. For the longest time in the church world, it was the other way around. You're either a loyal American patriot or you hate God. You know, it's not that way. See what I mean? And this is the exact kind of thing that Jesus was trying to establish back when he was, on earth. And for whatever reason, Christians still haven't caught on to that. So then the second is the business world. This would also be school is under this. Like high school, Zach brought that up. College, this would be under the same realm. And you really have to watch out because in our culture there's this kind of anti-authority atmosphere where everybody's like, I can't be told what to do. And so obviously you're going to have to try even harder to not fall into that same trap. Where the heck is Colossians? Goodness sakes. Colossians 3:23 says this. And the whole section talks about this, but I'm really only going to look at verse 23. Whatever you do, work heartily as for the Lord and not for men. You can read that whole passage in there. He's talking about the different authority structures. We're not going to get into it because we're not studying Colossians tonight, but really some good stuff in there. And then the next realm is the church world. Hebrews chapter 13. And there's multiple passages throughout the Bible that talk about each of these 4 realms. So I'm cutting my discussion very briefly. Hebrews 13:17 says, obey your leaders and submit to them, for they are keeping watch over your souls as those who will have to give an account. Let them do this with joy and not with groaning, for that would be of no advantage to you. He's talking about your church leaders, not the government. Okay, and you can read the rest of the passage, and he makes that clear. And then the last one is the family. Now, oddly enough, the family is the one that people have the hardest time with, I think. A lot of times we just kind of accept that we have a government over us. You know what I mean? We just kind of accept that we have to go to work. The church world, we kind of are a little bit gray and fuzzy there. We'll go there on the weekends and whatever, and then just leave us alone for the rest of the week. But the family one is the one that people really, really, I think, kind of causes a problem with the rest of the realms of authority. Proverbs 15:5 says, a fool despises his father's instruction, but whatever heeds reproof is prudent. And it goes on and on and on about, listening to your parents' counsel. In fact, Proverbs 1 through I think like 3 is pretty much listen to your father's counsel. Listen to your father. Listen to your father. Listen to your mother who bore you. Don't despise your mother and father when they grow old. All these different things about listening to them. And so we're going to talk about what that has to do. And the reason why mostly in the Bible it talks about having counselors, listen to wise advice and that kind of stuff, is because this is what our reasoning naturally does. We see something in it and it looks like a good idea. And then, if we set our own bounds to ourselves, we just kind of stray around, What happens is, now understand me on this, we have something in us that we don't see because we choose to only see the goodness in us. So then somebody comes by and says something to point out that flaw within us, and it's like, oh, wait, what? And it kind of hurts our feelings, You guys know what I'm talking about? Well, if we don't have counselors and advisors in our life, we're never going to have that experience. We're never going to be able to grow there, okay? So we're going to have this flip-flop life where spiritually we're never going to really take root. And as far as, maturing and that kind of stuff, it's going to be kind of this standstill. And you'll find yourself go back and forth about stuff. Proverbs 14:12, there is a way that seems right to a man, but its end is the way to death. It seems like a good thing to do. It seems like a good idea, but it's just not. Proverbs 18:1-2 says, whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. He breaks out against all sound judgment. Have you ever decided that you were going to do something and then you ask somebody else and they said, that's a bad idea? Whoever isolates himself seeks his own desire. Verse 2, a fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. I want to be heard. I don't care what you have to say because I'm right and you're wrong. When somebody are you actually listening to what they're saying? See what I mean? Well, I don't like them. I didn't know God had to ask your permission on who He's going to speak to you through. See what I mean? Yeah, I think that's good enough. Authority and advice may irritate us, but it is for our own good. God established authority for our good. See what I mean? We like talking bad about our bosses because that's just something that we do, right? It's how we unwind. But here's the truth. Your boss makes sure that everything is running where you have a job to go to.
Right.
Right? And hypothetically, unless they're siphoning the money, they're in charge of all this money that they have to make sure they put in the right places so that their business can continue to buy the product to get it to the people. You are being paid to do what they told you to do, not to like them. And in today's society, it's very common to hear people say something along the lines of, well, I just didn't like them, so I quit. You're not paid to like them. They're hiring you. This is the job description. Do this and this and this. Okay, I want to do that. So then you put in for the job, and then they pay you if you do that job.
Right.
It's that simple. I mean, it's not math. Rocket science, it is math. But it's not rocket science, Right. It's a real simple, basic idea there. Family structures. A lot of times we get in conflict with our parents, especially growing up. Oh boy, my teenage years were filled with a lot of just emotionalness. Ugh. Teenage years were just terrible. I don't think I'd ever go back through that. Go through all that nonsense with emotions, the zits. Oh my gosh. Not important. Anyways, but those family structures are important for forming who we are. See what I mean? And for how we work. Our parents oftentimes, for instance, give us our work ethic.
Mm-hmm.
If our parents sit around doing nothing all day, we're probably going to sit around and do nothing all day.
Right.
It's just the way it goes. Let's see, what were the other ones? Government. A government's job is not to provide for us. It is not to provide health care for everyone. It's not all those things. A government's job is to govern the people, making sure that they're safe, right?
Right.
The leaders sacrificing of themselves to ensure the betterment of the whole.
Right.
That's not what we see today.
No.
What we see today is the government that runs things. They decide things, and we just live our lives. Blissfully unaware. That's the whole idea of our organizations like CIA and NSA.
Right.
We don't need to know. Well, hold on now. This is supposed to be for our betterment.
Yeah.
Oh, it's the betterment of the whole. Okay, well, I'd like to be a part of that decision.
Exactly.
See what I mean? But we're not. Because, so anyways. So it's kind of, you see this corrupted, but it's still kind of, something that's needed. And then nowadays you see people trying to lay moral responsibilities on the government as well.
Yeah.
They should be providing for the homeless. They should be providing for the refugees. They should be providing for my health care. They should be providing for... Okay, hold on. I'm all for helping people in need. But what we're doing is immoral. We cannot honestly expect for all of our problems to be put on the government for them to take care of, while we sit back and judge the government for not doing what we told them to do. That is immoral. We as Christians should have no place at these stupid rallies protesting not letting the refugees in. That is complete, utter stupidity. You want to do something about it? You go do it. It's not the government's job. And more importantly than that, Jesus never said, go and complain to the emperor until the emperor takes care of it. He said, you go do it. I think that's completely immoral. Completely immoral. So I do think that we should definitely watch that. Not putting our responsibilities as Christians on somebody else.
Right.
See, I mean, that's wrong. That's wrong. Okay. And then the last realm was the church. Obviously, you can see where a church without some kind of guidance would be a terrible idea.
Mm-hmm.
Strange teachings, no maturity, no growth, problem solvers, problem causers mixed in with just terrible. Pastor gave a great example. If a farmer has these different pens of cows, okay, he has the cows broken up into these different pens, and he's got one problem cow. Is he going to just move it from pen to pen, causing problems for all the other cows and all the other pens? No, he's going to take that out of that pen. So in the same way, when there's a problem causer in a church, you don't just send them to another church. See what I mean? God doesn't want that person causing problems to go from pin to pin, ticking people off. He wants that person to change and to grow and to learn. So, it is for our own good. Does anybody know what this is? Take as much time as you want. Whoever thinks they have the answer, let me know.
Zoomed in forest.
Zoomed in forest? Pretty darn close.
Zoomed in people. I see like the little heads maybe.
Oh.
Crowd of people.
You can't tell, can you? You have some ideas, but you can't really tell. And so let's go to the zoomed out picture. The picture of China from earlier. It's that spot right there that's zoomed in. That's what happens when our life is void of responsibility and authority structures and that kind of stuff. We get blindsided to it's not eternal, Ben. I'm sorry, but it's not eternal. We get blindsided to our problems. We get blindsided to the situation, and God uses those other people in our lives to give us clarity. Because what do? I really, really, really want to do this. So then we talk to someone like our parents, or we talk to someone like the pastor, and they talk us through these things, and they give us clarity on things. And then we start to see kind of a bigger picture. Well, maybe I was just being selfish on what I wanted, rather than what it actually was. See? And that's one of the big things about keep advisors in your life. Keep counselors in your life. Don't let yourself be the only. Don't let you be the only guider to your life. That's just a bad idea. So what is our responsibility to structure? To authority. I don't want for this lesson to be real long because it's not really a discussion night. It's more of just a topic night that I'm getting through. So let me check something right quick. Okay, that's what I thought. Romans 12:18. I thought I missed one of my passages. Romans 12:18 says this. If possible, so far as it depends on you, live peaceably with all. In your government, in your business, in your family, in your church. As much as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Well, I've tried, and this person just doesn't like me. Okay, so let it go. But don't let a bad attitude start, and don't talk about them behind their back. Don't. See what I mean? As much as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. So, first off, the biggest misunderstanding with authority is that you have to agree with them on everything. You cannot possibly submit to your authority if you don't agree with them on everything. Okay, well, let's go down the list. Didn't agree with Obama. Didn't agree with Bush. Didn't agree with Trump. We've never had a president that I've agreed with in my lifetime. I mean, before me, I imagine there might have been someone. But you see what I'm saying? Like, well, what about your parents? Well, they did this and that. If you're gonna give qualifiers to why you do what God told you to do in the first place, you're not really obeying God. You have to choose to obey Him. So that's the first thing. You don't have to agree with them on everything. The second thing, you don't have to sin. If your government passes a law, if your family tells you to do something that's immoral, if your church tells you to do something that is immoral, you don't have to sin. Submitting to your authority is not about sinning. Okay, you get what I'm saying here? Because let's throw out some hypotheticals. The church decides that the Holy Spirit is not God, and that everyone who wants to be a member has to drink poisoned Kool-Aid. You don't have to do that. See what I mean? You don't have to sin because they're your authority. Okay? Does that make sense? Now, it gets a little more complicated about stuff like, well, what happens if your parents tell you not to go to church and you're underage? Well, that gets a little more complicated. We'll look at that in just a second. You don't have to let them make all your decisions. This is more about adults than kids. Husbands shouldn't be in a place where they make all the decisions. Wives shouldn't be in a place where they're making decisions apart from the husband. Churches shouldn't be in a place where the pastor doesn't answer to a district or to a board or to anybody. See what I mean? Or the pastor's under God. There's supposed to be structures there, And pastors don't get to decide if you are going to move or not. That's not their authority. The same as they don't write out a ticket. Right? They don't write you tickets for when you speed. It's not under their authority. See what I mean? So once again, you don't have to let them make all your decisions in life. That's just... Well, I'm doing this because Trump did... If you're doing something just because Trump did something and you're reacting to it, you're probably not going to have that great of an influence anyway, so you might as well just hold off. And honestly, let me just throw this out. Politically, there's so many people supercharged right now that anything that you're going to say isn't going to be received anyways. People have already made up their mind whether to hate Trump or to love Trump or just be whatever about Trump. They've already made up their mind. So any political statement that you make will be lost in the clutter of things. Okay, honestly. Do I have any idea what that women's march was about? No. Do I have any idea what the point of that day of women not working? No, I have no idea what it was about. I mean, because it's been lost in the clutter of everything else that's going on with Black Lives Movement and the women's rights and everything at the same time. See what I mean? We're having too much discord at the same time. People aren't aware of what your statement is, so you might want to hold off on that too. Just throwing that out there. They don't have to submit to your way of doing things. The biggest misunderstanding I see with young adults and authority is they think that they have authority over their authority. Okay? You see people living in somebody else's house and then criticizing everything that that person does. They're doing this, they're wasting their money with this. It's none of your business. It's their house, it's their life. They are not under your authority. None of your business. In fact, I would go a step further. If you're above 18 and married, I would say that there is next to no good reason to live under somebody else's roof. If you're over 18 and married, okay, maybe for the span of 2 or 3 months, but what's going to happen is there's going to be friction. Eventually, the people you're staying under, they're going to try and assert their authority over your marriage, which isn't going to work because authority structure is between a man and a wife, not a man and a wife and the mother-in-law. See what I mean? And so that's a bad idea. In fact, I would say it a different way. Well, no, I think that's good enough. And also, if you're living in somebody else's house, they don't have to do things the way you like. They don't have to spend their money the way that you like. See, I mean, you don't know how many people a week who I talk to that have this problem. And they don't seem to get it. They don't have to do things the way that you like. If you don't like it, move out. You know what I mean? As far as, is there a certain age when you should move out of your house? Usually your parents will set the tone on that. I have a friend who has their daughter still living with them, and she's, I think, 30 now. I mean, I wouldn't do it because I don't really want to live with my parents. I'm an adult now. I want to live on my own, and I've been married now, so I really shouldn't live with my parents. But with that being said, whatever. I don't think that there's a certain rule where, like, once you hit this age, you have to move out. But usually your parents will set the tone on that. I will say that it can be difficult moving out on your own. And so if you're going to move out, make sure that you're prepared because you don't want to move out and then move right back in. That's annoying. That's really annoying. Just a word of advice on that one. However, if you do get married, you should not move in with your parents. In fact, I would highly discourage people who are married living with other people who are married at all. That's just a bad idea. You know what I mean? There are some situations where if a marriage is strong enough, I think that it's okay. But I think for the general rule for people, it's not a good idea. So let's see. Make sure I said this clearly. You don't have to agree with them on everything. Everybody got that?
Yes.
You don't have to agree with them on everything. Okay, I'm going to say it again. You don't have to agree with them on everything. Okay? And then the last point is I think just as important. They don't have to submit to your way of doing things. Okay? We're all good on that? They're going to spend their money in their own way, right?
Yeah.
They're going to allow things in the house and not allow things into the house according to what they want in the house, right? Right?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you do if you don't like it? Move out. You're an adult now, and if you can't deal with the way that they're living their life in their household, that's not their problem. See what I mean? You could literally be living in the house with Hitler. Doesn't matter. It's their house. See what I mean? And oh my gosh, we're one of the people who I talked to over the last month that this was their situation was going on and on about how they couldn't stand living with this person, and they couldn't see it wasn't their house. It doesn't matter if you can't stand them, like it's their house. What do you want them to move out of their house because you don't like the way that they're living? So I mean, like that's not really how that works. And the person I was talking to wasn't even paying rent. They were just living with the person, and then they were criticizing them about stuff. It's like, you don't get how this works, do you? As a general rule, the persons whose house it is, their rules go.
Mm-hmm.
That means, well, I have my own convictions. Not in their house, you don't. You can be totally 100% against alcohol and they can drink, and you have no say about it. They can drink heavily and you be against alcohol. It has nothing to do with you. So, I mean, that's the way that authority works. Not because we like it, because that's the way it is. So whereas you might not respect the person in authority, like, for instance, people have mixed feelings about Trump, it is the position, still, of president. And that is worthy of respect. Right?
Yep.
Right? Awesome. And honestly, I'm going to say this. I didn't like Obama. I didn't like the things he did. I didn't want him to get elected in the first place. I didn't vote for him. In fact, I just didn't even vote because I didn't want the other guy in either. But he was still my president. And you know who isn't Trump's president? I mean, who you know the people who, yeah, Trump isn't their president? The people who don't live in America.
Yeah.
If you live in America, I'm sorry. Trump is your president.
Yeah.
So you see these people with the whole, Trump's not my president. Well, then you're not an American because he is, though. Honestly. I saw the funny, never mind, I don't want to cause, you know.
So you don't like it, move out. Don't live somewhere else for 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. So many things that I could say, but I'm not going to. See that? Self-control. So some three main purposes of authority. The first is maturity. Authority has ways of working in us, things that are lacking, and that's just, you know, protection. It goes even deeper as a Christian because when we rebel against our authority, literally, God removes blessings from us and opens us up to the realm of Satan. So that's a lot of stuff to handle there. 1 Samuel says it like this: rebellion is as of the sin of witchcraft. It's on the same tier. Same stuff going on. So, you know, something to definitely think about when you're done with rebellion. You know, just keep that in mind. It is for our own protection, and God will protect us as we are submitted to authority. Are there any circumstances where we are allowed to come out from the realm of authority? Yes, there are few and in between and far between, and usually God is the one who tells us to do that thing. Hey, you, get out of that church. I mean, God specifically tells you. Hey, you, move out of the country, which I have yet to hear God tell someone to move out of the country. Just because there's political unrest is not a reason to move. Honestly, we are Christians. We're not called to live in a utopia. We're called to witness to the people around us, right? That means we could be living in Ethiopia. Our task would still be the exact same, right?
Yeah.
Right? Awesome. And then the third purpose of authority, to give us direction in life. Now, once again, they're not making the decision for you. You can do whatever you want with your life, honestly. As long as it's glorifying to God, whatever. I also don't believe that God has predestined you for this one ministry. I think God equips you for certain things, and I think occasionally God does tell you to do a certain thing. Absolutely. However, I don't believe that it's the authority's job to tell you what to do with your life. I just don't see any biblical warrant for that. I don't. You know, it's your decision, but I will say this. Making plans and decisions with your life without considering God, your authority figures, you know, advice, those kinds of things, not a good idea. Not a good idea. Because our minds think of all kinds of stupid things. So just throwing that out there. Obligations. What is our obligation to authority? Exodus 20:12 says, honor your mother and father. Okay, that's great, but what does honor mean? It means to think highly of, to bless or respect. So are you going to occasionally do things that your parents might not be a fan of? Yes. But what's most important is that you honor them. You don't do things out of spite. You don't intentionally not do something just because they told you to do it. You listen to them when they give you advice and consider what they're saying. You have to make the decision yourself. However, it's always a good idea to listen to advice and to counsel, even if it's from an enemy, even if you hate your parents. See what I mean? So with that, oh, well, once again, if you hate your parents, you're probably not honoring them, in which case you should probably, you know, resolve that. Yeah, so, and then as an adult, the same thing kind of happens. So as a kid, when your parents tell you to do something, you really have to a certain degree because you're living under the roof and you're underage. So you kind of have, you know, not much choice there. And then to submit to someone. To submit means to subject yourself to one who God has placed in authority. Okay? So in the confines of a church, you submit yourself to the congregation as a whole, but also to those in authority, right? We are subjected to one another. When we give a word of prophecy, for instance, we don't just run the show. In a marriage, we don't just decide what things to do for ourselves, right? The husband can't just, oh, hey, Gracie, by the way, I spent all of our savings on buying myself a new go-kart. Well, I don't have the right to do that. Bumper car, because they are better than go-karts. See what I mean? And then what about business, for instance? It's not that you're any less of a person. It's that they have the job and you don't. So you're doing what they told you to do because they're the boss. So, anyways, I'm hoping that this is kind of making sense because you don't know how many young adults have a misunderstanding about authority. And the man we feed will thrive, and the one we starve will give way. That's just the way that our spiritual life works. As we feed our spiritual person, right? Our I don't know how else to say that. We grow in Christ. We make godly decisions. That kind of stuff happens. But what happens when we stay out of the Word? When we don't spend time in prayer? When we don't seek after God? When we don't stay in church? When we just kind of isolate ourselves and become our own island?
Our natural tendencies show up.
Our natural tendencies showed up because that's what we're feeding.
Uh-huh.
Well, I watch movies all day and television shows. Okay, and where's the Bible in that? Oh, I don't read the Bible every day. But you're pouring the world in yourself every day.
Yeah.
So shouldn't you be pouring the Word in yourself every day? Well, then you're obviously not going to have spiritual victory. You're obviously not going to get maturity in your spiritual life. Why? Because you're not feeding your spiritual life. See what I mean? So, with that being said, as we feed our spiritual self, we will learn authority. We will learn how to respect people. We will learn how to love people. But trying to honor people who you don't even like without seeking the Lord is going to be a very hard thing to do, if not impossible. So if you want to change, obviously, hey, submit yourself. Problem solved. We have to let God change us and work in us. And I think that where it all comes down to is having God as our authority. Remember when we were talking about lust and greed and pride and all that? It all came back to not submitting to God, right? God is our ultimate authority. And as we submit to God, we will submit to the pastor. As we submit to God, we will submit to our spouse. As we submit to God, see what I mean? It may take time, but it'll happen. So this is just an example of how God works character in us. We're a diamond in the making. I've showed you guys this before. We're a diamond in the making. God is using these annoying things in our life. Okay? Sometimes it can be our mothers and fathers. Sometimes it can be finances or circumstances or whatever. Okay? God is using these different things to mold us. The prophet Jeremiah said it like this. We are like clay that God is forming into something. Right? So, when we don't listen, God brings more situations and people by to work in us, things that we didn't catch the first time. Ever notice you marry people that your spouse sometimes says the exact same thing that your mother and father said? You ever notice that? Why is that? Maybe because there's a flaw in us that God is trying to work out. So, some final thoughts, just questions that people generally have. Understand your authority's reasoning. It's a lot easier to be okay with what your authority is doing if you understand why they're doing it. For instance, maybe your parents don't want you to go to the prom because, you see what I mean? I don't know. I can't think of anything right now off the top of my head because Teresa's never going to go to the prom and she's going to stay home and be daddy's girl forever, and I'm going to always hold her and cuddle her for when she goes to sleep. Just kidding. Do you see what I'm saying? About how sometimes maybe a parent could be blinded to their growing daughter. You get what I'm saying. So understand your authority's reasoning. Not that this will just help you to be more compassionate towards them, honestly. Trump's reasoning for not allowing the refugees in. Why? Because he's trying to protect America from terrorists. Do I agree with the way that he's doing it? It doesn't matter. See what I mean? I'm not the president of the United States. I should pray for him, though. I should pray for the situation, and if it bothers me so much, I should do something to help the refugees. If you're not willing to do something to solve a problem, you have no right to complain about it. You understand that? And your marriages. If you are not doing anything to resolve the problem, you have no right to complain about the problem. You see this happen a lot with people who are thinking about divorce. He doesn't show me love. What are you doing to fix the situation? Well, I nag him all the time. Well, how's that working for you? See what I mean? If you are not doing something to fix your problem, do not complain about it. But anyways, understand your authority's reasoning. Second, listen as God tries to talk to you. Even if it's an annoying person, sometimes God will be using them to work in us. Okay? You never outgrow authority. Once I'm 18, once I moved out, there will always be authority in your life.
Yeah.
There is just always going to be there. It shifts from different people to different people. Mm-hmm. It does. I thought, hey, I'm going to be my own boss. So I go to college and I find out that the dean's my boss. So then I get married and I find out my wife's my boss. So then I get a job as a pastor. Surely now I'm at the top of the chain. Now I've got other people who are my bosses. I got a whole board who's my boss. I've got 2 other pastors who's my boss. I've got a district who's my boss. I have a congregation who's my boss. I have a lot of bosses. So, no, I'm not my own boss. And what happens is our authority structures, they just change over life. They don't go away. So get this idea out of your mind that there's going to be a perfect utopia where you can do whatever you want whenever you want. If you live under someone else's roof, you are under their authority. That's the end of that conversation.
Yep.
If you can't be under their authority, you need to move out. Like, it's that simple. You know what I mean? They set the rules, and you just have to live with it, or you have to move out. I would say this, though. Don't rush out and move somewhere else just because you have a bad attitude towards someone. You should never have bad attitude towards people as a general rule. Just throwing that out there. So you should forgive them before you move out. In fact, you might want to stay there until you learn to resolve the issue and then move out. Just throwing that out there, unless you're married. If you're married and you're under somebody else's roof, you need to get out of the situation. That's going to cause too much strain on the marriage. Just move out. You are under your parents if you are 1, living with them, and 2, underage. So what if I'm an adult and I don't live with my parents? They are no longer your authority. However, they are still an authority figure in your life, and you should listen to them, and you're still tasked with honoring them, right? And as Proverbs says repeatedly, listening to their words, right? They're not in authority over your life anymore, but they are an authority figure in your life. Does that make sense? Okay, cool. Let's see. What about divorced parents, whoever you're living with, whoever has legal custody of you, or whoever you're with at the time? Like, for instance, let's say you live half the time at this person's house, half the time at this person's house. Well, then that half you're under their authority, the other half you're under their authority. So, if you get married, your spouse is your authority. If you stay single, you should still have counselors and honor authority figures. In fact, if you're staying single because you can't be under somebody else's thumb, you really haven't learned your lesson, and all the more why you should have more counselors in your life. We are meant to help each other and be bound in fellowship. We're not meant to live isolated lives. So even if you're single, you should still be involved. Paul says it like this. You older people should be raising up the younger people. You younger people should be submitting to these older people, so you can learn from them. Anyways. What if you are widowed or divorced? It's the exact same status as if you're single. Your spouse is out of the picture. Either they're dead or you're divorced from them. They no longer have authority there. However, if you think you married the wrong person, you have the wrong idea about marriage. There's not like one perfect equivalent person out there for you. It just doesn't work like that. There might be someone who you almost instantly fall in love with, but that has nothing to do with the one. So marrying the wrong person, you're married to them. Like, what are you talking about? There's no right or wrong person. If you don't like your authority, pray through. Pray for them and pray through the situation. Because they're still your authority. Forgive them and accept it. There comes a point where you realize that there's something in the back of your head that's holding back. See what I mean? Not just an authority in all areas of your life. I wrote a Facebook post about this a couple days ago. It's called Burning the Fleet. Getting rid of any chance of escape. This is how it is. Accept it and move on. You know what I mean? Accept it and move on. And I don't want to underemphasize this. Pray through the situation, though. We as Christians are not called to have, Pastor calls them, now I lay me down to sleep prayers. These are either just simply repeated prayers that you just repeat, whatever, or prayers that you memorize, that kind of thing. Or these are prayers where they just kind of scratch the surface. You know what I mean? Where you spend like 5 or 10 minutes in prayer, rather than consistently staying in prayer. Where you get away from everybody, an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, you just get away with the Lord. It's not about a time, it's about just getting away with the Lord and not scratching the surface. Because spiritually, you're never going to grow if you keep your prayer life confined to that. It's never going to happen. So God wants you to grow and impact His kingdom. Our lives cannot revolve around ourselves if we are His disciples. If we are truly God's disciples, our lives cannot revolve around ourselves. That's just lesson number one. What American Christians are trying to do is they're trying to revolve their lives around themselves and their own comforts and their own desires, and then they're still trying to call themselves Christian. That's not what we see in Acts in the early church. We see Christians giving up their life, giving up their well-being, giving up their desires and their plans and saying, God, what do you want me to do? And we see the church booming, growing. Their needs are being met. They're providing for one another. Why? Because their life wasn't about them. Their life is about God. The problem is in America we have too much stuff. We have too much stuff, and we don't want to sacrifice that. So we will never be able to witness to those in situations we have not conquered. If you are bound in pornography, you will never be able to witness to those who are in a marriage tiff, in a marriage conflict. It's never going to happen. If you are bitter towards somebody, you're never going to be able to help people through their attitudes. If you have an authority problem, you're never going to be able to help other people in authority. Who are having problems with authority. See what I mean? Yeah. Your witness is going to be cut down. So how does this apply to what we're talking about here? If you don't learn these basics, your witness is going to be drastically shot down. Yeah. I hope you enjoy not having a ministry, because that's what's going to happen. Do you want ants? Because that's how you get ants. So, how would you describe yourself in one word? The question of the week. How would you describe yourself in one word? Why?
Because I never get at them. I barely got out of it when they asked me for the missions team at Sagu. They're like, if you could be any kitchen utensil, what would it be? And I thought for so long they forgot that I didn't answer, and they didn't have me answered. Thank God.
Maybe they did, and they're just like, I'm tired of waiting. I'm just kidding. Remember that, guys. You will never be able to witness to people in areas that you have not conquered. Keep that in mind.
It happened to me last year. Something happened with my even though the teacher was wrong, and I fought for it for so bad just to prove a point that she was wrong about it. That my supervisor got involved and said, it doesn't matter, even if she was wrong, she's still your authority.
Right.
You're supposed to. I'm like, but she's wrong. I'm like, she's still your authority.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa. So I mean, sometimes you just don't realize. So somebody points it out that no matter if it's right or wrong, you still have to be submitted.
No.
Yeah. Are you talking to Nicole? Yeah.
Let me give you guys a situation. Hypothetical. I'm going to church, and you know what? I decide I don't really like the pastor. I just don't like him. So now I leave the church, and I don't go to church anymore. So now a Christian comes by me and he says, I'm having such problems with my boss at work, and I don't know how to resolve this conflict. Well, what am I going to say?
Right.
Well, you need to stand up for yourself, and you need to do what you... See what I mean? Why? Why? Because my spirit has been polluted by my poor decision. I see this happen on Facebook all the time. Embittered divorced people go off on these stupid things, and then these other people just, oh yeah, honey, yeah, honey, yeah, they just feed on it. Yeah. They're not able to help each other.
Yeah.
Like one person really kind of cheesed me off. They're all talking about how they don't need anybody else. They just about going off about how all this, and so somebody coming on there. That's why I don't. That's why I just keep to myself. What? You're supposed to be the Christian in the situation. What are you doing? What are you doing? We're trying to get this person back in church, not to reinforce their bad attitude. Like, it really made me mad because I was like, I've been trying to get her in church for how long, and you're telling her to... Ooh, yes, there are hypocritical people out there, but no, you should not be isolated. Goodness sakes, what are you doing? But anyways, so, once again, everybody understand that? Mm-hmm. Any questions or comments before I stop? No.